Hello and welcome to this episode of Triton Nation Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Gonzalez. This episode is presented by the Pacifica Athletic Network. This week, I'm excited. We have two special guests with us today on our podcast. We have our head girls basketball coach at Pacific Christian, James Parker, and as James said earlier, a local legend, Jeanette Pohlen. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So I'm excited to have both of you guys. Jeanette, you have an impressive basketball playing career. Local standout at Brea Olinda, correct? Am I right there? You did you play all 4 years varsity?
Yes, all 4 years.
Cool. And then recruited and attended Stanford University. Were you also there for 4 years?
I was.
You were couple championships or almost?
Almost.
Okay. I have you into 4 straight Final Four appearances.
Yes, every year, Final Four. It kind of
that is impressive.
It's crazy. I look back on it and I think I didn't realize at the time, because it was right away we went to a Final Four. But yeah, came close. No championships, unfortunately.
That not too many people say they can even do that. So congratulations on that one. And then it seems like your career continued. You have a first-round draft pick in the WNBA. 9th overall, I will add, by the Indiana Fever, and you won a WNBA championship in 2012. What was that like?
Pretty amazing, honestly. It was kind of made up a little bit for the non-championships that we did win in college, but it was just one of those special years. Like, on paper, we weren't necessarily the best talented team, but we all knew our roles. We came together. We had really great chemistry on and off the court, and everybody played their roles really well, and that just kind of gave us a lot of success.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an impressive feat as well. And lastly, I mean, Coach is right. There's a lot here. The World University Games. We were talking a little bit about that. It's the first I've heard of them. Sorry for those of you that have played in the World University Games. But a gold medal representing our country. Please tell me more. That seems interesting.
Yeah, so USA Basketball, they kind of have these feeder teams as they're looking at kind of putting their roster together for the national team. So in college, you try out. USA kind of puts this pool of players together, similar to the national team, but more on the collegiate level. They put together a pool. You go to Colorado Springs, their training facility, and you try out. And then that summer, it's in different locations around the world. So that summer was in Serbia, actually, in Belgrade.
Really?
So, but the cool thing about the World University Games is that it's a lot of different sports. So it was men's basketball, women's basketball. They had water polo. They had track and field. So it's like this big kind of like mini Olympics for the younger players, essentially, like moving into the national scene. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a feeder system.
Yeah. So a lot of the players I played with ended up being on the Olympic team, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Is it predominantly college age kids?
Yes.
Because it's university games,
Yep.
I'm assuming? Okay.
Yeah. And then I would say like the Pan American Games, there might be one or two other kind of tournaments, like worldwide tournaments that they put their teams together for.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, so Coach James, you guys kind of just started connecting over through Cal Swiss. Tell me a little about like where your guys' history kind of comes in, and maybe the past you have that you didn't know you had, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, so obviously I'm coaching club with Cal Swiss right now, and Jeanette Pohlen was played for Cal Swiss back in 2006,
06.
And so, kind of was familiar with who she was. And recently she's kind of got into, coaching youth and being able to mentor young women. And so she's coaching a group of young kids that I'm familiar with, and we kind of connected that way. And she does a fabulous job. I think she's a great role model for young people, and it's great to see people with her type of background and her type of experience, and being able to share that with young people and having them grow and learn and have somebody they can look up to and aspire to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Should have her on more often. Yeah. So part of this, I'd like to kind of jump in and talk a little bit about kind of your high school career and maybe the impact high school athletics had for you. Being a high school Pacifica Christian, and this podcast kind of being outward facing towards members of our community and really the youth sports community. you hear all this talk about the value of club and value of high school. I'd like to just kind of hear, where high school came in and how it impacted you in a positive way and helped prepare you for this impressive career that you have.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can say, I was definitely lucky to be a part of a great program with a lot of rich tradition. Brea Linda, for a long time was kind of one of the powerhouses.
The team,
in Orange County. And I played for Jeff Sink, and he's won kind of everything you could win in high school, girls high school basketball. So I really feel like the way he ran the program, the way he ran our practices, it was like a no-nonsense type situation, right? And going into the next level, I completely feel like he prepared me for kind of what to expect going into it. Like, we're going to have 3-hour practices. It's not going to be easy. You're going to run. You're going to get yelled at. Like, it is what it is. And it was true, right? When I went and got to Stanford, I mean, it was like, it wasn't a shock just from kind of what I dealt with in high school. So just having that like mentality, and I've seen Coach Parker kind of run some different drills and workouts, and I would say he's very similar. Like, you can tell he's getting these girls ready for that next level, kind of just the way things are structured, the way he approaches things, and it's just going to be helpful for them. It's not always easy. They're not going to like everything. As a player, there were drills I didn't like, but you know what? It made me better, and that's really what the point of the drills as coaches that you're trying to do. It's all about improving each day.
Yeah. No, and that it's encouraging to hear that high school played that role in helping prepare you, for the next level. So the landscape, the landscape of high school sports has changed, I think, specifically for female athletes in the last 20 years. I think the access and opportunity, like, I'm thrilled for my daughter to have the opportunity to now play high school sports, play club sports, play even at the next level, because I don't think it was as true to that and to them maybe 20 or 30 years ago. You could say social media helped with that, or the Women's World Cup soccer, whatever. There's a lot of things that have helped project female athletes in this country, which I'm thrilled about, especially being a girl dad. What are some advice you could say to some girls who have that goal and maybe don't know what that looks like or how to navigate that? And you talked a little bit about just the perseverance, but kind of just maybe words of wisdom to some of these girls that are listening, like, I want to do what she did. How do I do that?
I think having short-term and long-term goals was something that I always like to do at the beginning of every season, and the beginning when I first got to Brea, Stanford, but more specifically in high school, set those like short-term goals for the season for yourself. Set the long-term goals, like, where do you want to be your junior year coming in as a freshman? And I know for me, I was pretty self-motivated, and you got to want it. Like, you really got to want it, because that is what separates the good players from the great players. Like, those players that really want to put the extra effort in, the extra work in, and kind of identifying those weaknesses you have and seeing what you can do to improve those so that they're not weaknesses anymore. I think 2 things I would definitely say for these young high school players: be coachable. These coaches know more than maybe they think that they know. And, as a teenager, you kind of feel like sometimes you have everything figured out.
Yeah,
and
right.
the things they're telling you, maybe like, you're like, okay, whatever. But like, just be coachable. Even if you don't necessarily agree with what they're saying or how they're going about it, having that mentality of like just kind of absorbing and being a sponge and wanting to learn will just kind of get you really far. So I would just say, be coachable, have a good attitude. You can always control your attitude. You can always control how you handle situations, and you can always control your effort. Those are things that only you can control.
Yeah.
You can't control the shots you miss. You can't control the turnovers. Like, those are going to happen. And as somebody that's kind of like slowly starting to get into coaching, I'm learning that. I'm like, I don't want to have to tell somebody to focus 5 times during practice. I don't want to have to tell them to bring the energy, bring the effort. Like, again, those are things that to me separated me from a lot of other players. Like, I just went hard every drill, every practice. like I didn't know anything different because I just wanted to be the best. So those are some things I would.
No, those are words of wisdom for sure. As a coach, and James, I'm sure you could agree. You can't coach attitude and effort. Like, and when I coach girls soccer, when those girls show up and they may not be the best technically or even tactically always get it, but if their attitude and their effort is there, like it's almost a win. You can build off of that. Coach, I feel like you would have some questions for Jeanette just on her journey and some of the things she's accomplished. You being a high school coach now, a couple years with Pacifica, and being obviously in the club world for so long. I'd like to know some of your insights on it.
Well, as you're talking about your preparation and your dedication, how committed you were, which is one of the things that helped catapult you to play at the level that you played at. So when I see a lot of my young players, and they're kind of left to their own to be able to build their skill set, to put in the extra work, a lot of them don't have a format, or they don't have a clear vision of what that really looks like when you're doing individual workouts on their own. So I wonder if you could kind of help young people understand, if you did you have like certain things that you did? Like, you got in and you spent 15, 20 minutes on your ball handling, stationary or whatever. Did you get under the basket and work on your forms and your shots? Things like that, where like I tell like my young kids, have a ritual. Have something that you go to every day consistently. Don't get bored with the basics. Be strong with your fundamentals. So what would your advice be, and what maybe experience do you have as far as kind of formulating a plan and having some structure to this type of stuff that you did?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Having a ritual, having a routine. I was definitely, and still am, I'm just somebody that's a very routine person. And I had a shooting routine every time I came in the gym. When I was getting warmed up, I would always get there super early so that nobody else would be in the way while I was shooting, because I just like to have that time. But as far as ball handling, for me, I can remember like working for my dad in the summer sometimes and just being in his warehouse, just having 2 balls and just doing ball handling. So for me, I'm like, when people can't handle the ball or they're not putting the effort in for that, I'm like, you literally don't need a court for that. You don't even need a basket for that. That's like, to me, if you're not working on that, again, you don't want it bad enough. But again, going back to like really figuring out what your weaknesses are and which ones you kind of want to tackle first. So I would say, like, for example, for me in high school, I was like what I like to call a point forward. So I would just bring the ball down. I'd, kind of run the plays and then go get in a position to score, essentially, or screen for somebody and I'd be open. So I never really shot threes. I could shoot. Like, there wasn't that I couldn't shoot, but I wasn't really a 3-point shooter. I got to Stanford, and freshman year, Tara Vanderveer's like, we need shooters. We need you to come in. We need you to be able to knock down some shots. And fast forward, my probably like end of freshman year, sophomore year, and I was like one of the go-to shooters. Fast forward to my WNBA career, that's literally what I was known as. So it's just kind of funny when you put your mind to something and you really focus on different things you want to improve. That's kind of what happens. And again, shooting, that's muscle memory. I just feel like there's things that you can work on that don't require a ton of like effort other than doing it. Yeah. I just got a ton of shots up. Almost every night after practice, I'd get on the gun and I would just shoot. I'd shoot threes, I'd shoot everything. So it's really just kind of putting in that time, but again, kind of identifying which weaknesses you want to tackle first. Yeah. So that would be my advice.
When we first started off, I think you had talked about your Stanford team when they went to the Final Four 4 years in a row, and the chemistry of that team and how everybody understood their role and how everybody played their role to a high level. Just recently, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a soundbite of Gino Auriemma that's kind of gone viral the past 24 hours, where he talks about nowadays people use the word role model like it's a bad word. Oh, they're just going to be a role model when they get to college, or they're going to go there and just be a role model. And he's like, why is this such a bad thing? And I don't know if you have some advice, because even in high school, you have kids. It's very important that everybody understands what their strengths are, have good self-awareness of what their weaknesses are, and how they can work together as a team. What would your advice be to a young person where they can learn how to embrace maybe where they're not great at, or maybe what their role is, and learn how to embrace their role and learn how to be stars in their role? And I think it's more about acceptance. Yeah. But what would your advice be?
Yeah, I think, listen, only one person can have the ball on the court at one time. And it's like, there's so many other ways you can contribute on the court. And I know, like, at Stanford, we had a couple players, Roz Golden-Wude. She's actually like on ESPN and did TNT, and she's doing all these broadcasting and podcasts and stuff now. But when she was at Stanford, she was a lockdown defender, and she took so much pride in that. And as her teammates, like, we appreciated her so much, and we let her know. So I think, like, as a teammate to somebody that maybe isn't, quote, like, going to be the scoring threat, or, isn't going to be the leading rebounder, whatever it may be, that gets more of the notoriety and the recognition, like, at the end of the day, do you want to win? Because if you do, you're going to do whatever it takes for the team. And again, it's like, if your teammates need to support you, help put you in a position that you can be successful. Like, I know for me, playing point guard at Stanford, my role, like, was to make sure everybody was in the right position, getting people the ball where they could do something with it, running plays that will help everybody be successful. It was so much more to it than me. And once you kind of take that out of it, where, okay, I'm not going to take a shot every time down, I'm not going to, do this and do that, and you take out that, like, selfish mentality, then, I mean, everybody wins. The team that's winning is going to get more recognition. So if you're on a team, maybe you're not the leading scorer, maybe you're not the leading rebounder, whatever it may be, but playing for a team that's winning and doing big things, like, you're gonna get seen and recognized.
It all makes sense. Putting it's the cliche saying, but the whole there's no I in team, right? But there's so much truth to that. Like, it's at core, there's so much truth to that. I'd like to kind of switch gears a bit, but not, I guess, if we can kind of relate the dots. Tell a little bit to our listeners, maybe a time as a student athlete where you faced that adversity at some of those highest levels, and kind of maybe what you did to overcome them. I think high school athletes now are so hard on themselves. They're so critical of them. They're their worst critics. I see it. I'm sure you see it, Coach. What was a moment where you had that and you overcame it and kind of moved forward?
I think I don't know. These days it's tough because, and I don't want to, like, make myself sound old, but we didn't really have social media. Like, old. even when I was playing, and I mean, I graduated from Stanford in, like, 2011. I think I had, like, just got a Twitter my junior year.
The big thing was like
starting.
MySpace way back then.
Yeah,
right?
I remember doing, like, a group project at Stanford about Twitter, like, getting started. And anyways, but yeah, I think it's just a different reality for these high school kids, and what they have to deal with, like, each and every day. And when they have games and they're being filmed or it's being put on social media, it's like I could empathize with them as far as just, like, having that feeling of being judged, I guess, every little thing you're doing. For me, I definitely was hard on myself, but I also realized that I'm going to make mistakes. For me, to answer your question, I think playing point guard at Stanford was a very daunting task because Tara, her expectations are very high for her point guards, and it was one of those situations where, okay, somebody else is in the wrong position. The play was run wrong. It wasn't even my fault, but it was on me. Like, the blame was on me. Whatever went wrong, it was on me. And when I first started playing point guard, I was kind of like, dang, like, that wasn't even my fault, But in her eyes, as a point guard, it's like, you need to make sure everybody's in the right position. We're running the plays that we need to be running. Like defensively, we're all on the same page. It was like everything was kind of like up to me. But one thing I can say is that I like to say that I had like short-term memory loss. Like I would hear my coach, totally take what she had and try to make the corrections, learn from it. But it's like next play.
Yeah.
And that was my mentality. Next play, all right, I made a mistake or I turned the ball over, whatever, but all right, we're going to get it back. We're going to do something else, and I'm going to keep improving. So that's kind of my advice, more of a next play mentality.
Yeah. Like you're going to make mistakes. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
Like,
always. At the highest level. LeBron makes, you know what I mean? It's like the top athletes make mistakes. So it's like you can't be that hard on yourself. You're gonna have to. That's how you learn from those mistakes.
It's right, and I think you're right. I think social media has totally. I mean, all you see on social media is the good, or everybody laughing at the person that made a mistake.
Yeah.
There's no like at Pacifica. We talk about like failing forward because through failure comes growth, but you don't get a whole lot of that. I think these kids at least, and I don't know, Coach. You may have more insight with your team on that one, but I just think overall there's not enough of encouraging the failure, encouraging the process even.
Well, it's something that I encourage them. Just about every practice, we probably have a discussion, or there might be that subject might come up to some degree. Maybe not every practice, but it does come up quite often. That it's like I met with our girls maybe a couple weeks ago before practice, and in our pre-practice, that's what we talked about. This is a safe zone. This is our sanctuary. It's okay to come in here and not be perfect. It's okay to come in here and fail. It's okay to come in here and make mistakes. You're going to come in and I'm going to get frustrated. I'm very specific when I want things done a certain way. And if it's not done that way, I'm going to let you know that I didn't like the way it was executed. But it's a safe zone. We could walk out of here knowing that we're doing this to get better, and it's all out of love. And so I kind of admonish and encourage my girls to be able to take risks. And I think that's an important quality to have in a culture of any type of sport, any type of high school or whether it's club, is to kind of create a culture and an environment where people feel that they're cared for, where they feel like they're safe. And when I first got into coaching, I was all about the X's and O's. I was all about player development. And I never realized, but now getting into my 15th year of coaching young people, how much of it is relational. Mm-hmm. How much of it is about knowing that they care and doing things. My best moments with my team are our van rides to our strength and conditioning. It's the going to grabbing a
talking
bite.
About dinner.
Talking about dinner.
Talking about
right.
food.
And then when we get on the court, I'm all business.
Yeah.
But I'm able to be that way, and I'm able to get them to respond to me the way I want them to respond to me because we have that relationship and we have that bond. Mm-hmm. So we talk about it a lot, and I just tell them you're not going to get better if you are not willing to fail. You have to be willing to fail. And I used a quote. I don't want to butcher it right now, but I used a quote the other day that you can't be successful without first having the confidence to fail. So if you don't
Sounds
have
about right. I don't think you butchered it. Well done.
if you don't have the confidence to fail, you'll never have the confidence to succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Coach.
Yes.
How do you feel like, you've coached kind of I would say like right at the beginning of social media, before social media, and here we are kind of in at the peak, I would say. What are your thoughts on just how things have changed, like how the girls are in high school? Like how do you deal with all of that as a high school coach?
I think it's really awesome thing for us to kind of dive into and talk more about, because when I got into coaching, it was like when social media started exploding. And I actually use social media a lot to a degree for my own branding and marketing, and I see the purpose and the goal in it. And nowadays, with where it's gone, for the most part, I like to coach kids that aren't caught up into social media. And the kids that I do coach, I constantly remind them, just drown out the noise, focus on the work. And and all that other kind of stuff will take care of itself. So if Overtime Basketball decides to get a clip of you and a highlight, and they like to post it on their social media platforms, which have like millions of viewers, great. But don't focus in on that. Don't search for it. Don't go out looking for it, and don't let it affect your work. Don't think because you got highlighted on Women's Slam, Instagram, that you've all of a sudden arrived. And don't think that that's going to take care of your recruiting, because that's not going to take care of your recruiting.
Right. And it's like, if that's the case, like you said, it's like, where are your priorities? If that's all you're worrying about, like, what are you really wanting out of basketball? Yeah. Are you wanting the fame? Or are you wanting to be the best? Because, like you said, just to touch on that, it's like, it'll work itself out if you are one of the best players in the country, in the world, whatever your goal is. But yeah, I feel like I'm kind of on the same page as you, and maybe that's partly because I didn't have it growing up either. But I was also like, I didn't really care about that stuff. Like, I just wanted to win, and whatever I could do to help my team to win, that was my goal.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's important to identify people that you want to play for you as those type of people who really love to compete. And I think it's also important that you foster that. So it's because you're not always going to get everything, and you also have to kind of create it yourself. You have to teach young people. You have to hold them accountable, and you have to kind of give them direction. And so when it comes to that kind of stuff, I want players, and they know this, and that's why this is how I foster it, is I want players that they love the game because they love to compete, they love the camaraderie, they love the teamwork, they love to set goals, and all those things. Because I ran into these issues a few years ago where I started noticing players that played for me that were more concerned about how many likes they got on Instagram with their video, who was recruiting them, who was not recruiting them, their highlight videos. And it was like the only reason why some of these young people play is for that purpose. And then you watch them struggle when adversity hits them in a game because they're not. Yeah. They're more concerned about what their appearance is, or how they're being looked at, or you got Tara Vanderveer, or you have Lindsay Gottlieb at Cal Berkeley, and she's sitting there on the sidelines watching you play because they're recruiting you, and you just went 1 for 8, and you're more. When you get caught up in those external things and you let that noise kind of interfere with your game, you're not going to play well. So I try to help them understand, like, you got to be in the moment. You got to be focused what's important to your team. Yeah. You got to be willing to fail. You can't be looking at that kind of stuff, because what they don't understand, and what I try to help young people that are looking to play at the next level to understand, when those college coaches are watching you play, it's not so much that they're caught up that you want 1 for 8. Yeah, they want people that could execute. They want to find people that are highly skilled and fundamental and consistent. But they're also looking to see how you respond and what your demeanor, if your energy changes from one instance to the other. And that might have a better effect, or even a way you can make a better impression on that college coach on what type of person you are. Because they want people that know how to do it.
Well, and it's interesting. You're echoing what we talked about, I think, 2 episodes ago. We had a head college coach in here talking about recruiting during a pandemic, and one of our questions was, is your inbox just filled with videos? Are you just watching Baller TV and NFHS? And he's like, there's nothing like recruiting a person in person to see what is the adversity like when they get subbed off for not playing well. How do they respond? How are they as a teammate? Because you're right, social media, it's just all these highlight clips. And you don't get to see the true character of a person, the true character of a team. So it's encouraging to hear on a completely separate episode now. It's echoing the same thing. And you, Coach, run your scouting service. I doubt those scouts or those college coaches are checking your social media and just basing decisions off that. They're probably calling you saying, hey, what's this person like? Right? They're probably calling you, and the relationships that you've built is what they're basing recruiting off of, not a 10-second clip on Instagram.
Well, that's what I was talking about earlier, if you think that these highlights that get posted on all these different platforms are going to take care of your recruiting, you're sadly mistaken. Yeah. And that's not to say that it won't come across my line. If I'm a college coach, I might get, like, someone's going to forward me like a highlight tape, or they might follow these social media platforms as well, and they see this kid. But what's the first thing they're going to do? But I've said it, it's been said before, and I'll say it again. When a college coach calls to ask about a kid, they don't go like, hey, are they good? Almost every time it's like, what kind of person are they?
Tell me about them.
Tell me about them. What's their family like? Are they good students?
Yeah.
And so I think kids just need to kind of really focus on that a little bit more.
That's the kind of reality of the landscape too, and we're running out of time a bit, but colleges care so much more about the whole person, and they look at they look at high school athletes as almost like, you're going to represent our school. So what are you like as a person? What are you like in the classroom? What are you like on social media? It's not like maybe when we were recruited out of high school where they just look at the paper and check all the box scores and go watch a game. Like, you see it all the time. You could completely tear down a university's brand if you're a knucklehead and do something on social media and it gets out there, and before you know it, you're on ESPN on what not to do. But, well, guys, we're hitting our time here. I want to thank you both for taking the time to join us today. This is very encouraging, very fascinating. I hope to have you guys back. For our listeners out there, thank you to Mark, our producer, Mariah, our sports information director. Please like us, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can visit our athletic website, pacificathletics.org. Until next time, thanks, guys.